Come on in, everybody. Come on in. Take your seats.
Give you a minute to come in here. We got a full house as usual.
Tell us where you're from. Tell us where you're from. Tell us what else do we want to know, Piggy? Are you a newbie to
What?
our ecosystem? Have you been around for a little bit? We always like to hear the class of the student. I think we're mostly 25s, 26s here, I would guess, but you
Yeah,
guys
let us know where you are, where you're coming in from. There we go. Arkansas, nice.
Northwest Arkansas. I knew that was going to be the first response. Figured.
Newbies. We
25.
love our newbies. Welcome to our newbies.
At the Bronx, Michigan. All right. We're always very well. Belize. How about that? 2027. There we go. Some newbies and just we're fairly well represented here. Geographically, Brian and I are in the Boston area here. We're both just north of Boston, and Peggy's out there representing you West Coast peeps up in the Seattle area. So let's kick off and do introductions because we got a ton to cover tonight, guys. And this is being recorded. We'll remind you that more than once because we get the question a lot. We go pretty fast. I think all three of us have a nature to talk fairly fast, but a part of that is by design because there's just a lot to cover in a short period of time, and we know we lose people after an hour, including ourselves. So we cut you loose really right at the top of the hour. My name is Matt Carpenter. I'm one of the founders at College Aid Pro. Class 2025 will mark the 20th class. This is my 2 decades that I have guided families through this process. So I have done this thousands of times over, maybe more. I don't know, maybe tens of thousands of times. I'm not sure. But I like to think, actually, matter of fact, I can say with confidence, you're in very good hands here. I think collectively, we like to think of ourselves as just kind of a North Star. One of the hardest parts of this process, I think, that I imagine a lot of you are feeling is like, where do we begin, right? Where do we even start this thing? Right here. You guys came to the right place. So we are going to set the foundation tonight with where should you be at? What should you be doing from a financial aid standpoint, from a scholarship standpoint, from an admissions standpoint? We're talking largely to the class 2025. But if you're underclassmen 26, 27, you're going to still learn stuff tonight that's going to be relevant today, right? Action items that you can use right away. So that's the goal. I'm really excited to have two of who I think are the top professionals you're going to find in planet Earth in this space. Okay, Peg Keogh, who's my buddy, my partner in crime. We do this every day together. I like to call her the fairy godmother of financial aid because that's accurate. She will. So it's someone I've admired from afar professionally for a while, and she's also done this herself. She's been where you guys are right now with her kids. So I think that's a really great credential in terms of her being able to empathize with you all. And Brian Ford here is somebody that I think is really unique in the admission space because he's been on every side of the table and some. He's worked as an admissions director at Boston University in the UC system. He's been a school counselor at some of the most prestigious high schools in the Boston area and then in the private sector as well. So he's been in every part of this ecosystem. He's read over 60,000 applications. He's been in the room when these decisions get made. So for my money, and actually when I have an admissions question, this is who I go to. So again, you guys are in great hands here. But Peg, if you want to say hi quick, and then Brian, maybe we'll let you say hi once we kick it back to you to introduce yourself.
Yeah. So, super happy to be here. Welcome to all of our newbies. As Matt said, I've been doing this for a long time. I was in the financial industry, and when my kids, I have twins. I see we have a few twins people here. So, hit high school, I did a deep dive and was just blown away at how complicated everything was. And so I decided just to focus on this, just to support families on this. And that's what I did. Started my own business. Long story short, joined CAP a couple of years ago as their director of education. And this is what gets me out of bed, educating you guys and just helping you on this journey that is currently quite complicated. You're missing out on some of the complications that the seniors are dealing with, but that's who I am. And Brian, why don't you just say hi?
Hello, everyone. I'll give my full introduction when I get started, but really happy to be speaking with you tonight and hopefully to work with some of you in the future.
All right, let me share my screen here. So we are College Aid Pro. So, and this is truly our mission to end the student debt crisis by empowering you to shop smarter for college. And doing these type of events, the more knowledgeable you are about this stuff, you're going to be a huge leg up, right? And it'll relieve stress and it'll help you navigate this with your kids, relieve stress between yourself and your kids, which is huge. So um, that's who we are. So there we are, yet again, the three of us. Everybody should have gotten an email earlier today encouraging you to set up your free CAP software account. So Matt's going to put the link on the slide in the chat. If you haven't done it, please do it. If you've done it, I know a lot of you have because we can see that on the back end. That's great. Hopefully you have it open on the side. In a little bit, when Brian's done talking about some admission stuff, we're going to hit financial aid and you'll be able to look at your unique situation when you have it set up. It takes about 4 minutes to onboard, super easy. You can put in 3 colleges and it'll really get you on your way to start understanding your family. Are you eligible for need-based aid? If you're not, is there merit aid coming? All that great stuff. So strongly encourage you to get that done if you haven't. All right, Brian, let you take over.
Awesome. Thank you. So again, my name is Brian Ford. I am the college admission expert with College Aid Pro. I also am the director of school college counseling at Boston College High School, which is a premier all boys high school. We're just south of Boston and Dorchester. I like to joke that the kids I work with are the extras in the town and the departed. And so they're a great group of kids and they apply all over the country. I've spent close to 2 decades now in and around college admissions my entire career. As Matt said, kind of the first 10 on the college side, where I recruited and read applications from more than 21 different states, met students, everywhere from inner city Boston to Manhattan to El Paso to Boulder, anywhere and everywhere, and got to read applications for all different types of schools and the environments. And obviously, since switching over to the high school side, now I help out students, intricately in their process. And then I've spent the past 3 to 4 years doing so privately, primarily with College Aid Pro. And so, what I want to talk to you tonight is a little bit about that beginning of the process. A lot of you, especially 2025 families, are thinking, where do I get started? And I think there's this misnomer, and there are things out there, and well, they may produce some results. I don't think they produce all results of, tell me 3 or 4 things about you, and I'll spit you out a college list, and you can kind of move forward. I believe that the birth and kind of the building of a college list is a much bigger process. It's really a self-discovery and a self-identity, and really kind of needs a shepherd, needs another person to help you through that. And so I'll talk a little bit about that tonight. So when I talk about the 30,000-foot view, it's kind of everything that's involved within the college process, and what we do with our families, which we'll talk about a little bit later at College Aid Pro. But whenever I'm working with a family, whether it's at BC High or with a CAP family, these are some of the steps that I take with my families. And this first one, which we'll mostly focus on tonight, that building that productive college list, is a process that takes 2 to 3 months. And I know that seems kind of crazy and seems long, but there's a method to the madness. I always say that a good college list should work like an accordion. It should get bigger and smaller and then bigger and smaller, so that by the time you get that list of 8 to 10 to 12, sometimes 15 schools, depending on the academic major or the individual, you feel really strong about that list in terms of its audit, in terms of target schools vary to safety schools. What does it mean financially for you to apply to some of these schools? What's involved as far as supplemental essays, things like that. These are processes I go through with every student. We talk about all the different ideals of a school. And what I encourage students to do is really kind of hone in on what's most important to them. And by offering a lot of schools, the first list I give every student is maybe 30 to 35 schools long. And that's done purposely. It's not to say I want you to apply to 30 schools. It's we're going to ensure that when it comes time to apply, you're really excited about the schools you've applied to because they've gone through kind of a real test for you. We look at everything from your academics and how that fits in. We'll obviously talk about in a lot of separate webinars this year, which really take up a whole hour, the personal essay and supplemental essay. So I won't harp too on that other than know that for CAP alone, probably 400 to 500 essays were read this year, particularly supplemental essays, certainly more at BC High. And that's a huge part of the process now and something we really pride ourselves in helping with. We talk about students with the college visit strategy, and then even how to show that demonstrated interest. So reaching out to schools and really kind of selling yourself. So when I'm talking with students, I think there's kind of these obvious ones that people always talk about when they're talking about school characteristics. And I like to call them the front of the brain. They're the ones that, if you were to search a school and just say, show me stats on the school, maybe these come up on that first site in Google, or maybe even that snapshot that kind of Google gives you right away. So where is it located? What's the size of the school? Maybe where the campus is or what the campus type is. Obviously, if they have your academic major, if it's residential, and then, do they have what you want out of a social life? Are you an athlete trying to get involved? Are you in student government or mock trial? Are you in the arts and you want to continue that in college? These are kind of things that maybe begin your search process, but by no means should be your only part of the search process. These kind of maybe lay the foundation, but when you go on to the next slide, you'll see what I really try to get students to think about a little more deeper. So this is what I talk about when I try to take that next step with students. So when talking about size, first of all, I don't just look at, okay, what's the total undergraduate population? Because that doesn't necessarily tell the full story. We do the research and have the reflection on, what does that mean for the average class size? And more importantly, what are you looking for? I think a lot of times there's this negative connotation to large class size or those lecture hall styles. It really depends on who you are as a student. And so I think, we look at all avenues of what a student is looking for. And for some students, they want that large lecture hall, but also know that it isn't just when it comes to large population means lecture hall. Great example, I always use Northeastern University, close to 20,000 undergrads, but their average class size is actually 40 students. It's only a little bit bigger than what you're dealing with probably in your high school right now. When I talk about the external location of a campus, it's always important to remind students that when they visit school, so not just visit the campus, visit the surrounding area. What is that town like? Is that a true college town, like a college park at a University of Maryland or Gainesville, University of Florida? Or are you more like downtown Queens, like Fordham University is, and you're more kind of built into the kind of historic and industry of that neighborhood? And how does that work with the local area? Are there jobs for college students? Are they welcoming to college students? In most cases, they are, but you want to get an idea of like, is there any tension between the university and the local area? I always joke about college layout. I know Matt and I both went to smaller schools here in New England. And so I really like the fact that I could wake up at 7:56 a.m. and make my 8 a.m. class. I like to get those extra minutes of sleep. Not every kid wants that. Maybe some kid wants the big sprawling university, like a University of Notre Dame that has the huge quads and the Gothic buildings and what that looks like. I always encourage students to not just look at what their major is, but what's the academic approach of the school? And what I mean by this is, are they a research-based institution? Are you going to be required to do a dissertation at the end of your undergraduate experience? Is that something you want to do? I primarily went to a small business school. It was the perfect fit for me. I'm an extrovert by nature. I don't mind working with other people and working within groups. And within those first 2 weeks of freshman year, I was in group projects. That was great for me. That's not necessarily great for everyone. Some people want to be in more theory-based classes, have more larger discussions, maybe more do individual work. Is it more of a test school versus a paper school? These are all questions we can be asking of ourselves. And then obviously the last thing would be those admission requirements. And I noticed a question talking about standardized testing. There have been so many changes in the past few years, not only in COVID, but I think this is really a monumental year for college admissions in so many ways, obviously because of the changes of the FAFSA, which Peg and Matt are going to talk about in a little bit. But when you think about the continued test optional movement, more than 1,800 schools test optional. Columbia University just last week becoming the first Ivy League to announce that they will be permanently test optional moving forward. All 8 Ivies still committed to being test optional for the next 2 years, as well as 47 of the 50 U.S. News and World Top 50, at least committed through the year 2026. But you also think about the affirmative action ruling and what that has done to college admissions, how that has changed the game. The biggest thing that we've seen is the increase in supplemental essays. And so colleges in a really, what I think is ultimately positive way, giving students the opportunity to talk about their identity. But what that means is a student applying to maybe a really competitive group of schools 5 years ago might have been writing 8 to 10 essays. As Matt and Peg know from, pull your hair out, October, Brian. I had students this year that I was working with that wrote upwards of 40 to 50 additional essays. And those were for only school lists of 10 to 12 schools. And so not only is it more important to start early, but know that that's going to be part of your fall. And so all of these type of admission requirements, it's not just what's my GPA and what's my test score, all of these other pieces that come into play. And a lot of times I'm working with students, and I think it's important to know that close to all of half American students now come in with some type of undecided or undeclared interest in their major. I think we can all agree in its simplest form, it's a little insane to ask an 18-year-old what they want to do for the next 50 years of their life. But this is kind of the world we live in with college admissions. That being said, there are some great ways that you can kind of do that self-exploration. And so if I'm working with a student, there are students I'm working with right now and our class 25, they know they want to do engineering, or they know they want to do pre-med, or they know they want to do accounting. But some have somewhat of an interest, but don't have a true idea of what their major is. So these are some of the questions we ask and we talk about, and we really break down, what classes have you really done well in high school, but more importantly than just what you've done well, and what are you excited and actually passionate about? I'm working with a great student right now that if you looked at her transcript, you would think business student all the way through, because she's excellent in math and she's excellent in her writing courses. But she actually states that one of her social science courses is her favorite course. It's her psychology course. It's not her best grade, but it's the one that she feels like she gets the most out of. And so she's having this, not identity crisis, but we're having great conversations of maybe there's a career for you that meets in the middle that really hones your strengths in math, but you can still also get kind of the excitement you get out of that. I always ask them, where are your interests in terms of kind of the world, what excites you, or what do you look for if you're looking at a news website? This is definitely the business student in me. I encourage, if not require, all students to do a little bit of an elevator pitch on themselves, because what it then tells me is what's most important to them. What are their 2 to 3 kind of qualities that they find most important? And then just asking, what are their strengths? And these are conversations I have with their parents too. And so it's really a full conversation and a team unity as we try to figure out what is most important to the student as we think about how that works. I go through the entire process with some students and they will stay undecided, undeclared, and that's totally fine. There are schools that benefit those. There are schools that have undeclared and undecided majors. And there is definitely not the stigma that maybe was unfairly on an undecided and undeclared student that occurred or existed maybe 20 to 25 years ago before the housing crisis occurred. And then last, I think one of the most important things, and really I like to call it the kingmaker in college admissions, is academic rigor. And so the National Association of College Admissions Counselors, which is a group that I'm proud to be a part of, it's a national organization that represents not only the interests of college admissions, universities, and high schools to both state and federal governments, but also is really a meeting place of ideas. They do a survey every couple of years of asking colleges what was most important in your process. Obviously, in the past few years, that has changed a lot. Standardized testing, for example, was always like 2 or 3 on the list. It was 6th on the list this past survey for obvious reasons. The one that has constantly been number 1 and will always be number 1 will be academic rigor. What are the courses that you took and how did you do in them? And so when I talk about that, I mean those college-ready courses. It is excellent if you're taking electives. You should diversify your curriculum. You should continue to do that. But know ultimately where you're going to get most kind of viewed and challenged, and I hate to use the word, but judged in terms of the application process, is those core 5 subject matters. So English, math, lab science, social science, and world language. If you attend, say, a religious institution and you're taking a theology class, know that many times those get wrapped into social science. So you are getting credit for those. And that junior and senior year is really crucial because as a student, you should be maturing not only as a person, but as an academic in terms of readying yourself for a college curriculum. But I always joke with students that junior year is the most important. That's kind of like the tagline that you'll see. And then I pause and then I say, until senior year starts. And then that becomes the most important year of high school because those first quarter grades absolutely make a difference. And more importantly, the courses you're taking in senior year absolutely make a difference. And so, while there have been so many shifting dynamics of college admissions in the past, just 2 weeks, never mind the last year or 2 years or since, COVID in 2020, one thing that you can always hang your hat on is the thing you're going to be judged on most is the courses you take and your success within them.
If I could, I think, Peggy, just real quick, if I could break in, one, maybe two questions, depending on Brian's brevity here. We'll test it. But
I see the clock.
Yeah, the first one is, and we get this all the time, and sorry if you said it, but I think people can always hear it more than once, and I don't know if we did hear is, as they're thinking about or getting ready to take test scores, ACTs, SATs, do we send them? Do we not send them? How do we know what the answer is to that really important question? As you know, how do you? And I know it's tough to answer on a general basis, but just talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, well, I think the most important thing to note is the answer is different for everyone. And so I'm sure there are some questions in the chat, and I'll catch up to the admission-based ones when I log off. But that's something we really pride ourselves at CAP. It's something I pride myself with my students at BC High, that there is no one straight answer for every student. 95 to 97% of the students I've worked with, both in my school and privately, did not either send their scores to all schools or sent their scores to all schools. It is usually a school by school decision that we make when we view your standardized test scores, whether it be the SAT or the ACT, and make a decision of, do they help you in the application process for this specific school? So there should never be a blanket decision, I'm sending my scores to all schools or not. The exception to that is if your standardized scores just aren't for you and you fall well below the averages of all the schools you're applying to, or if you're one of those extremely talented few that is in the 1580 to 1600 range. But there are conversations that are worthy of merit to go through each individual school and make the decision that is best. For some, we'll send your scores. For others, we won't, because we want to make sure that whatever we're sending, it's benefiting you in the process.
Yeah, that's great. And to me, that's even a learning for me over the last couple of years, especially where it's all this nuance since with this, test optional and that whole new brave new world that we're all experiencing on the admission side with that. But the headline here is you got to take the test, at least see how you do, and expect that for some schools you're going to send them, others you're not. And obviously the strategy of that decision is really important. But again, I think
there's no reason
going into it. Yeah.
There's no reason not to take them. You want to have that weapon in your arsenal just in case. Even if you're a student who knows, hey, I'm not a 4 hours on a Saturday morning type of guy, you still want to take them because you never know what can happen. And there are certain schools like the Florida State school system, like Purdue, like University of Tennessee, that have gone back to requiring them. And so depending on the schools, you may have to take them. And so it's important to keep that in mind. But that's something, when I'm working with students, we break down every individual school and we'll make that decision and also make the decision of, how many times do we really need to take these?
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, thanks. And we'll see if we have some time at the end for a couple more questions. But please, I know Peg's going to get started on the financial aid front. Brian's going to be living in Q&A, so keep the questions coming in Q&A. We'll leave the admissions focused ones for Brian. And
yeah,
again,
I
reminder.
left you a few questions there, buddy, so you can stay busy. Okay, so now let's switch gears. Let's talk about financial aid. So, Brian's talking about the academic personal fit, and the third piece of the trifecta here is financial fit, affordability. So let's talk about this. So the biggest takeaway on the financial aid side is that all these colleges are discounting. They're all on sale, if you will. It's just a matter of how they discount. We all know these high sticker prices, these costs of attendance, and they've been going up for decades. The most expensive schools now, I hate to tell you, are topping $90,000 or over $90,000 a year. So it's very, very hard for families to even fathom paying full price for a school. So, and you don't need to. These costs of attendance, we call it sticker price, they really are irrelevant if you understand how financial aid works, and then you understand where your family fits. And that's dependent on your child, it's dependent on your finances, and it can dramatically, excuse me, change from college to college. So how are these colleges cutting their sticker price? They're doing it in 3 different ways. The first bucket is need-based grants. And as the name hints, you have financial need assessed by that college, and they're going to give you free money, grants. It's either going to be in the form of federal, state, or institutional aid. Institutional aid means endowment money. In that bucket, by far, most of it comes from endowment money, not the federal government and not the states. You have to have financial need. Some of you might have set up your MyCap account and you're realizing you don't have financial need. Well, all is not lost. Your child could be eligible for merit-based scholarships, this middle bucket. This is also free money. It's just given out based on your child, their talents, their grades, test scores, music, athletics. All the schools are different how they do their merit aid. And Matt will get into the weeds a little bit more on merit aid in a few minutes. Those are the 2 buckets that you want to try and maximize. And one student could get both potentially in a family, and maybe just one. Just depends on the profile of the family. The third bucket we call self-help. So this is a part of a lot of people's funding strategies, and that's okay. It's loans and work study. Work study is a job. Your child will work. It's funded partially by the government. That's why it's considered need-based aid, but obviously you got to work for work study and loans need to be repaid. So it's not free. So you want to minimize that bucket as much as you can. If it's there and it's a reasonable amount of loans, that's okay. But these are how the cost of attendance is being reduced. So let's talk about the need-based aid piece. How do you know if you're eligible? Pretty simple formula that a lot goes on behind the scenes on. The cost of attendance that I've already mentioned, so that's tuition and fees, room and board, books, travel, personal expenses. That gets the official cost of attendance comes out the summer before the year starts. So current seniors, that's going to come out this coming summer for fall 2024, spring 2025 school year. They take that number and they subtract what we call for short the SAI, the Student Aid Index. This is what the colleges think you as a family can afford to pay for 1 year of school. It's the minimum amount you're going to pay. Doesn't mean that that's all you're going to be expected to pay. I will say through all the years of doing this work, I've had one mom in all that time see her SAI and say, yeah, I get it. Most people are shocked. They fall off their chair, they're mad, they laugh, or they ask me, hey, Peg, is that for 4 years? And I have to tell them, no, that's for 1 year. So it is what it is. If you've got your account open, you can see estimates of your SAI, and they should be accurate as long as you've really dialed in your inputs. So they take the cost of attendance, say it's 80,000, you have an SAI of 40, you have need of $40,000 at that specific school. Doesn't mean the college is going to swoop in and give you $40,000 in need-based grants. But you have that amount of need. That's the next piece of the puzzle, is understanding how these colleges meet need. So how is this SAI calculated? There's 2 main parts of the SAI. There's assets and there's income. So let's talk about assets first. It's student assets and parent assets. The first way to narrow it down is it's only non-retirement assets. So if you have 401ks, IRAs, 403bs, pensions, those are all retirement accounts. So those balances should not be included on financial aid forms, which is a big mistake parents make because they just don't know. So those are all off. Everything else is on the table though. Checking, savings, you have CDs, you have a stock portfolio. Some parents have been able to save for college. So you'll have a prepaid tuition plan, or very commonly a 529. That is an asset of the parents as long as the parent is the owner. The student, the child is the beneficiary, but it's very important to note that's an asset of the parent. And that's important because parental assets are assessed when they calculate the SAI much lower than student assets. So that's a common mistake, and it's very understandable because it's an account for your child, so you think it's their asset, but it is not. If grandma owns a 529 for your child, that's not on the forms at all. That should stay off. If you have joint accounts, which is very common with minors, if the parent is on that registration, you can put it in your bucket as your checking and savings, if it's a savings account at a local bank. And if you have an UGMA or an UTMA custodial account for your child, if that sounds like gobbledygook to you, don't worry. That means you don't have it. Not a problem, but that is an asset of the student. There are strategies to get that into the name of the parent, but you really need to talk to us before you would think about doing one of those strategies, because there's tax implications. You have to even understand if it will even help you, okay? And then this last bullet here, real estate. Some colleges will look at all of your real estate. That means including the home you live in, if you own it. All the schools are going to look at your other real estate besides your primary home. They're going to look at your market value, the market value minus any of your mortgages, HELOC, any of the liabilities. That difference is your home equity. It's the equity in that property, and that's what they want to know about, because they're going to throw that in as a potential asset. That's another big planning opportunity, another place you really need to understand that's not overvaluing your property, and how to be honest and not overvalue, and to make sure your primary home is not included if it shouldn't be. Assets are assessed literally the day you hit submit on the financial aid form. So you have time, if there are strategies to implement, you have time to do it. The other big part of the SAI is the income. And income, you don't have time to do it. If you're a class of 2025 parent, you can see on the slide here, the year that you're going to be reporting on when your child's a senior this coming fall is 2023. And it's obviously over, right? I know we have 26 and 27s on here, so tune in, right? You have time to plan. This is called prior year. It's a 2-year look back that you're reporting on. President Obama put this into place, years ago. So it made things a lot easier for reporting and getting things done. The biggest driver here is your adjusted gross income, which is line 11 on the tax return. There are some add-ins, but that's the biggest driver for most people. And for a lot of people, if you make a nice living, I'm a financial planner, in the end, in life in general, it's a good thing, right? In financial aid, it stings a little bit. It's a big part of the SAI calculation. One thing I'll mention, and Matt's going to talk about it at the end, you might be thinking, now that you understand prior year, yeah, like in 2023, that was like a banner year and I got a big bonus or commissions or whatever. Now it's not the same. That's all good, because you will want to appeal. That happens. People honestly get divorced by the time they're filling out forms, and the prior year, don't worry, you'll submit your a little bit at the end. That's, a step in the process.
Peggy, you got a little choppy for us at the
On the
end.
appeals part, on the appeals part.
Yeah, but I think message received, and
Got
obviously
the gist. Yeah, so basically, I'm going to turn this over to Matt now, but if you are looking at your SAIs in the software and you're like, oh gosh, okay, I get all this stuff that Peg just shared. My SAIs are high. So what am I going to do? You probably have an inkling because I've hinted to it, but I'm going to let Matt kind of get in the weeds a little bit about that second bucket that I showed you a few minutes ago.
Yeah, and to Peg's point here, right? And just by the nature of how many folks are on the call tonight, there's a percentage of you I can all but guarantee you're not going to be eligible for need-based financial aid. And there's not a magic wand that we or anybody can wave in order to change that outside of the small amount that you're entitled to, so long as you complete the FAFSA. So how do you get discounts, right? Because that doesn't mean you can start paying $90,000 a year times 4 year times 3 kids, or maybe you can, but you don't want to, and you don't want to be the only one that is paying full sticker price. So let's talk about that. I mean, the first thing to do, and maybe it sounds obvious, and we'll talk about, well, how do we do this? Where's your kid going to get a scholarship? Which schools that are good fits for your kid are going to say, we don't care how much or how little your parent or parents make. We want you to come to our school, and we're going to give you a financial incentive to do that, right? Merit-based scholarships. Before we get there, a few things worth talking about around that and related to that. And I've already answered a few questions within this realm. There are some colleges that, in order to be considered for merit-based scholarships, they require you to do the FAFSA, and when it's relevant, also the CSS profile. Okay. NYU is an example that we use because they're typically at least within the top 10 of applications received for all colleges in the country, oftentimes the top 5. I think there were 3 last year. So anyways, awful lot of folks are applying to NYU. If you want to be considered for merit-based scholarships, regardless of your income, of your assets, etc., you got to do the forms. Okay. Almost in the same breath, and again, I talked to a few folks about this. Not all colleges offer scholarships, and there's about 100 schools in the country that tend to be some of the more competitive schools. Scholarships do not exist. Okay, there's not one kid walking around an Ivy League campus that's there on the scholarship, right? The most talented kid at Harvard, whether it's athletically, academically, artistically, musically, or all the above, no one is there on a scholarship. Not one kid, right? That's the same with MIT and kind of schools of the like. Scholarships do not exist there. So especially if you're a really smart kid and targeting these competitive schools, but you're not going to be eligible for need-based aid, and you also don't feel like paying $90,000 a year, we at least want to hedge our bets and at least know that going into it, which, oh, sorry about that. Sorry, I screwed up myself. Which brings me to this last bullet and kind of our first point here. We always want to apply to competing colleges, right? These are big businesses at the end of the day. Let's call them what they are. They're multi-billion-dollar corporations that just don't pay taxes, essentially, right? So as consumers, we want to have that mindset, and one thing that we can do is apply to competing schools. Brian used to be an admissions director at Boston University. If a kid wants to go to Boston University, we're going to make them apply to Northeastern and or Boston College. Not because, and maybe you hated those other 2 schools, but we can leverage them against one another. So that's an important part of the process because they're direct competitors. So let me, if I could, I'm going to go into the platform, and Peg, you can share the link again. We had a few people asking, but most of you have already created your accounts, which is great. So this is what your home dashboard looks like, and we already took the guesswork out of, well, what's my SAI going to be? You're staring at it front and center. This is the foundation for determining your family's need-based aid eligibility. And there's 2 different formulas. Most public schools use the federal SAI. Most private schools use the institutional SAI. We got a ton of questions around home equity as well. Okay, now I won't get too far into the weeds in terms of the formula itself. Where I want you guys focused, and Peg teased this earlier, what's your family actually going to pay if and when you're accepted to these colleges? So this is a Massachusetts family, right? Average income, average savings, family of 4, split household, divorced family. But as you can see, and this is not a wonky situation here, it's going to be more affordable for them to go to the $90,000 college at Amherst than it is the in-state state school. Okay. Another wonky thing here. We see these schools, really competitive schools here, right? Almost identical sticker prices, but we're paying this big range if we're actually accepted there. Why is that? Well, NYU, they think all of the equity in your home is fair game. BU, they'll look at it, but they'll only look at some of it and they tie it to your income. Amherst College, even though they're a private school, they don't look at any home equity. So I'm telling you more than you need to know, but it's important to just have a really good understanding of what these schools are actually going to cost you. And if I click on any college, they're going to show me a few things. Number one, for every college in the country, we have every scholarship that they offer, and we're really good at projecting, well, how much is your kid going to get? Okay. And then there's some context there. We got a lot of questions about, should I send test scores? What are good test scores, right? And you can see at any college, if I click on this admissions tab, here's the average GPA, here's the average test scores, et cetera. So you have an idea of kind of where you all are in comparison to that school. And as you start to build this list of schools, you can search just based on who's going to give you the most money, right? You want to look for schools that are close to your house, within 200 miles. You prefer smaller schools like Brian and myself ended up at. You want to major in bio, whatever it happens to be, and you can just go sort based on who's the best with financial aid within that criteria, okay? Or who's going to give the most in merit-based scholarships to your kid specifically within that criteria. So this is a really powerful way to get a good idea of, again, number one, what are these schools actually going to cost you guys versus what your budget is here, right? And how does that outlook look? And then what are as that list is building, who's going to give us scholarships, how much? Who's going to give us financial aid, how much? And this is really the tip of the iceberg in the platform. But for those of you that haven't set up your free account already, make sure that you do to take advantage, because this is, again, when people tell us, where should I start this whole admissions, financial aid, scholarship world, start right here, because this is going to ground kind of your family and where you fit on this financial aid and scholarship spectrum, knowing that can be a little bit of a moving target.
All right, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, sure. And we'll just spend a minute here. We're kind of teasing, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but when it comes to actually, okay, well, when, how, et cetera, do we apply for financial aid? We're not starting to apply for financial aid until the fall of the student's senior year. These are just some of the takeaways at a high level. The biggest one being every school is different. Okay, so if you're applying to 10 different schools, we're going to have 10 different requirements, 10 different deadlines. They all require the FAFSA. Some also want the CSS profile. Schools like Princeton have their own institutional form. We can't miss a deadline, because if we give these guys excuses to give us less money, they will. And with that, you as the parent, as the consumer, the onus is on you to figure out, what do these guys require? When do they need it? How do they need it? Because they are not going to communicate that home. You have to kind of proactively go find that out as your list comes to fruition. So those are a couple high level points, and then Peggy can walk us through some of the forms themselves.
Okay, so this probably rings a bell for a lot of people. This is the main financial aid form, like Matt was just referencing, the free application for federal student aid. Almost every school in the country requires this. There's a second form that we'll talk about in a minute that is required in addition to the FAFSA, not in lieu of it. It goes live October 1 of senior year. This year is an anomaly year. None of you on this webinar are part of this, so you should feel very happy about it. There's a new version of the FAFSA that just came out. It's in its what they're calling a soft launch right now, and there's a lot of issues, so you don't have to worry about it at all. October 1, if the stars are aligned, the class of 2025 FAFSA will go live on October 1st, 2024. And then subsequently down, because I know we have some 26 and 27s. I already talked about prior year. You saw on the slide what that base year is. So if you're a 26 or 27 parent, don't increase your income if you don't need to. Of course, if you get a promotion, you're going to accept it. But some people create capital gains, they do things, and then it comes time for financial aid and it's shot up their income, and then they have to reach out to the colleges and appeal. So save yourself that if you can. The key thing about the FAFSA to keep in mind if you're a divorced or separated family is only the custodial parent does the FAFSA with the student. So remember, that's income and assets. So the non-custodial parent does not submit their income and assets. The definition of the custodial parent is the parent that has provided the most financial support for your child that's about to go to college on a year look back from when you're submitting that form. It's not the prior year. And there's a lot of families, and I've met with a lot of them already, that are like, you know what, Peg, we're almost 50-50 on our support. And even if you're not 50-50, but you can get to one parent providing more support because you realize that's much more advantageous to receive the most financial aid. It might be well worth working together as much as you can to make that happen. That being said, some families, it's hands down one parent provides the most support, and it is what it is. So that's the parent that's going to submit it. But if you're close, or if you are 50-50, then figure out what are the best cards to play here, and have that parent support the child financially just a little bit more. And then you're being honest, you're following the rules, and you're putting your best foot forward. That is part of the new legislation. So if you have an older child in school, forget about where the child slept the most nights. That definition is gone. Okay. So that is the definition of the custodial parent. To get into the FAFSA, and you don't need to get this right now, the parent and the student are going to need what's called a federal student aid ID, FSA ID. So that's something to put on your list, maybe in May or June. Just get it off your list. Go on the website, make sure it's studentaid.gov. You create a username and password. You're going to need that every year, both parties, to submit the FAFSA. But you don't have to worry about getting it now. It's actually jammed and not working that great with the current seniors. So just put that on your calendar for later this year to do that. The second form that I reference is called the CSS profile. So this is in addition to the FAFSA. There's about 200, maybe a little bit more, mostly private. There's a few public schools that require it. UNC, Chapel Hill, William and Mary, VA, and the rest of them are private. And so you're going to fill out this form along with the FAFSA. This form is much longer. It's much more invasive. It's much more complex. Most parents make errors on these forms, to be honest, and it creates a lot of stress. This is an area we can support you. We're not going to talk about that tonight because you're not ready to do the CSS, but just put that in the back of your head. Matt already touched on the home equity. This form asks about the home you live in. The FAFSA does not. The home you live in is off limits, but not on the CSS. And Matt showed you real-time examples of schools and how they look at this as a liquid asset very differently, which can really change an SAI for some families. If you are divorced and separated, both parents are going to be submitting their financials. So this is a key difference from the FAFSA. There's a custodial parent that falls under the definition that I just explained. That parent will submit the CSS with the student. Then the non-custodial parent will submit a separate non-custodial profile to College Board. That's the nonprofit that administers the CSS. The information goes privately to College Board. Then these colleges take that information and they do proprietary number crunching, and they come up with that institutional SAI that Matt showed you in his sample family. If you're a business owner, the income from your business has always been part of it. It's on your tax return. It's part of your SAI on the income side, but the value of your business could play a part in your SAI. And that's on the FAFSA side as well as the CSS side. That's a new change with the FAFSA as well. Small business owners used to be excluded for their value, and now it's all on the table. You should get some help when you decide how to value your business. Most people don't know how to do that. And the last thing you want to do is overvalue your business. You want to be honest, but you want to put the lowest reasonable sale value. And for some business owners, it easily could be zero, and you're not lying and it's not wrong. Okay. So very different form from the FAFSA, but it needs to be submitted at the Stanfords and Amhersts of the world, or else they will not give you any of their endowment money. They need to have both forms on file to give you a financial aid award package. So that's the CSS. All right, Matt, I'll let you take over here. Oh, you're muted.
2 nights in a row, Peggy. This is my first time in my,
I
what's this,
know, you're losing it, dude. It's only January.
my
Come
first day? Jeez, we get it together, man. Get it together. So look, this is kind of the last major seed that I want to plant, and then we're going to talk about the best ways to interface with us moving forward, and how obviously we can't get to every question tonight, how you can get your questions answered, how you can work with us moving forward. But here's the takeaway. You heard me say this a few minutes ago. Let's not kid ourselves. These are big businesses. They're very good at it too. Okay. It's a sophisticated process on both the admissions and financial aid side. Okay. Huge investments, like any major investment we make in our lives, we don't take the first offer, right? We're going to buy a home, we're going to buy a car. There's a negotiation involved here. We have to take that mindset to college, but the nomenclature, the vernacular we use here matters. We're appealing. We are appealing for additional financial aid and or scholarship dollars, right? This is probably my favorite part of the process. We had a beautiful win today. I won't show you all the details there, but we got $10,000 more dollars from Babson College, right? That's times 4 years. That's $40,000 tax free. But there's a method to the madness, okay? And again, it depends on the school, it depends on the situation, and these are kind of some best practices here. But Peg and I quite literally do entire presentations just around this appeal part of the process. Because number one, it's important. And number two, again, it's different than your average, I guess, negotiation, for lack of a better word here. So, but for most people, right, they don't even know that this is a thing, because believe me, these offers are presented very much like take it or leave it, right? We've yet to see the offer. We're still waiting for an offer that says, hey, here's what we're able to offer you. If this doesn't look good, just give us a buzz and we're going to make you whole. Right. That is not, maybe this year will be different. I'm not expecting it, but that's the deal. So, anyways, I think that's kind of our last major takeaway. And I do want to spend a few minutes about how we can support you, moving forward. I don't think we have another slide there, do we, Peggy?
No, we're all good.
And let me, and if you can, first, I'll just, what I would recommend for where you start, and Peg will share this here, but book a time to talk with one of us. If you want to learn about our more comprehensive services, which I will outline in just a minute here. But in this thing, you can, because we're also running a deal that's going to run through next Friday. So it ends, what is that? Whatever that date is, a week from
The 19th, I believe.
the 19th. We're doing $500 off our Wake Me Up When It's Over packages, any of those, which again, I'll talk about in a second here. And we'll give you some time to learn exactly what those are, talk to one of us where we can make an assessment on where we think is we can help you best. And if you decide to engage us within the next week and change here, we can get you $500 off. But to kind of quickly walk through these and what they are, what they include. So it starts at $3,000 for our base package, right? So there's three kind of broad buckets here. We have our financial aid package, our admissions packages, and there's two of those, and then what we call our combo packages. Okay. For the financial aid package, all of these, you are assigned one expert, and in some cases, if you have a combo, two. You have your admissions expert as well as your financial aid expert. In rare cases, that's the same person, but usually it's Brian will be your admissions guy, and we'll have a financial aid expert to tag team that with him. But for the financial aid package, what that includes, and if you get it now, it's again the $3,000, $2,999 minus $500 if you jump on board. So whatever that is, $2,500 by next Friday. But there's kind of four major parts to that process. Right now, we're in the kind of discovery phase, strategy phase, right? We're going to get your information and say, okay, here's the list of schools that are, going to be good fits for the kids, but we're going to get the most bang for your buck. These guys give the most financial aid, the most scholarships. We're going to make sure that we have competing schools there, right? We like to equate ourselves as being like a really good CPA. How do you present your situation so you're going to get as big as discounts as possible? Because once the financial aid applications become accessible in 10 months, less than 10 months, and 9.5 months, we're going to have a game plan, and then we do those forms for you, the FAFSA, the CSS profile. And again, we worry about who needs what, where, when, how, but it's the how that's really important. How we present your situation is going to dictate the type of discounts that you get or don't get. Okay. Um, and then the appeals part of the process that I just talked about, right? We lead the charge to say, okay, we got this offer from Brandeis. How do we go back and squeeze some more money out of them? Okay. And like I said, there really is a method to that madness, and it starts right now. We start building our appeal cases as underclassmen. And it'll make more sense once you kind of get in the weeds with us. And then the last kind of major piece of our financial aid service is, how are we going to pay for this thing? So if you're a family that has some resources, we got a lot of 529 questions. Can we move them to grandparents? Is that in play? If they're in a UTMA or UGMA, are there any options there? Should we use our 529 up front, or should we spread it out over 4 years? If we have to borrow, what loan should we take? How do we get the best rate, the most flexible repayment terms, etc.? So the idea is to drag you through the process from right now until your kid moves into the dorm, right? That's the financial aid piece. And then the admissions piece, there's two different admissions packages, but basically I like to equate it to like the financial aid piece of it. This is us holding the hand of the parent or parents through the process. The admissions piece is more Brian working directly with the student. Obviously, the parent is involved to the extent that the student and maybe Brian and you guys want to be involved, but really the admissions process, the onus is on the student. So Brian is going to help figure out, okay, right now, are our classes aligned with where they should be to help us get to where we want to go? Let's build this list together, right? And he's kind of I think has a sixth sense for those students that are just like, I just don't know where to start. What do you want to major in? I don't know. Do you want big school or small school? I don't know. I don't care, right? What do these
Perfect impression, Matt.
right? So we've seen those kids all of a sudden evolved into being really psyched about a handful of schools that they want to go to. And, and so that's what happens now. But then in the coming months, it's going to be time we got to nail our essays. That's more important than it ever has been in the history, or at least in decades, right? Where do we send the test scores versus where we don't? Where should we interview? How do we nail the interview? We have to nail the Common App, right? And the supplemental applications. That's where, again, that's what Brian's been doing this for 2 decades, right? And how I like to equate it, and this is relevant for financial aid, but I think especially for admissions, is like the student is the one who's done all this work. They've built the house, but in this incredibly competitive environment, that's not good enough, as harsh as that sounds. We got to be able to sell the house, right? And that's part of what Brian is helping these kids do, and we're helping you guys do, is like, you built it. We are where we are. Let us help you, kind of sell this the right way. And the two admissions packages is, one of them includes, you have all those services, but you're limited to 20 hours. Okay. It's up to 20 hours. There's another package that's a higher price point, but it doesn't have any limit with the hours, and it's up to 8 colleges, right? So it'll cover up to 8 colleges. And then if you want to stack on any a la carte things after that, you can. But really, for the most part, even if you apply to more than 8 colleges, you're going to be able to get to the finish line by yourself after those, you got those first 8 buttoned up. And then, of course, we have a combo, right? Yes, we want financial aid help. Yes, we want admissions help. Again, wake me up when it's over on kind of both fronts, but for those that understand, there's a lot at stake here, right? It's very expensive. It's very competitive, and it's overwhelming, right? It's overwhelming. It's stressful and all that. And obviously, our biggest metrics is, we got to get the best bang for our buck. We got to save as much money as possible on the cost of college, and we want to get into our top choice. Those are our goals, our tangible goals. But we want to try to make this thing as painless as possible, which it's never going to be painless, but hopefully allow you guys to just enjoy your last 1.5, 2.5 years with your kids, and just kind of focus on that, and let us do the heavy lifting on, I think, what we do best. So hopefully that gives you a gist of the services that we offer. Again, book a time with us. Do that now, because to make sure you want to talk to us before that discount expires in the next week and change here. And Brian's roster fills up really quickly, right? It's already he's already got a pretty stacked roster. So if you identified with him tonight and said, that's somebody that I would like to work with on the admission side of the fence, there's a little bit of urgency on that front. So again, I think whatever, I want to share that for what it's worth.
Yeah, we've already started work with some 2025 families, building lists. talking about extracurriculars, doing some really early stage essay brainstorming, but the kids are already into it, and it's been a great first step. So it's definitely the time to get started now.
Yep, 100%. And Peggy, you got any words of wisdom here?
Well, there's one, I always ask you this. There's somebody with twins and wants to know if she purchased the, $29.99. I know we discount for the second child. Do you know what that is off the top of your head?
Yeah, so it would be $3,500 all in with the discount. So if you $39.99 rack rate for the twins right now, right? And with the $500 off, it would be $3,500 if and that's just the financial aid side, right? We really don't discount on the admission side because the lift is lighter doing two, because we're kind of just working with one household. We're basically just still working with the parents, even though it's two kids on the financial aid side. Admissions, it's no less, as Brian can tell you, it's no less work because you're working with two different individuals. They each have their own essays and they're two different people, right? So yeah, those discounts are just on the financial aid side.
Yeah, and she said $29.99, so she was looking at that one. Okay.
Yeah, and the packages, right? It starts at $29.99. The most expensive, if it's the combo, for the so it's $29.99 to $8.99 if it's the highest tier of the admissions combo plus financial aid, and obviously there's some in between there. So it ranges from call it 3,000 and 9,000 minus the 500, depending on where you wanted to go. Yeah, and if you're just looking to get on the platform, right, create your free account, and then if you want to upgrade, it's $149. So you
For
know
the year. That gives
Yeah.
you a year. Yeah. And then when it renews, you'll get a pop-up and it's $4.99 a month. So don't wait until it's exactly you think you only need it for a year, because you really should be in there starting to, if you're working with Brian and you're talking about academic and personal fit, you don't want to put financial fit on the back burner, because what'll happen is you'll get a great list. Your child will get a great list with Brian, and then you come to us later and then we look at it and say, yeah, a lot of these schools aren't really affordable. You want to look at all of it together. It's hugely important, and it relieves a lot of stress.
Yeah, and the $149 includes the premium access to the software. So everybody has a free version. You can only put in 3 schools. You don't get this advanced search, right, that allows you to sort based on who's going to give you the most in financial aid and scholarships. So if you wanted to upgrade to all the bells and whistles of the platform, those being the 2 kind of biggest features that are behind the paywall, that's what's included in that upgrade. All right. Well, look, if you are new to us, really appreciate you tuning in. If you're back before, we always appreciate you continuing to pay attention. We're not going anywhere. We're going to continue to provide a lot of great content, throughout the next year and beyond, hopefully, right? God willing. And yeah, just continue to pay attention, stay engaged, no matter what, stay engaged, right? We failed you if kind of you go back and put your head in the sand after tonight. So please stay engaged at a minimum. And obviously we'd love to partner with you in whatever capacity you see fit, and talk to us, book some time and talk to us, and we'll help you out, figure out the best package.
And dare we say, have a little fun in this crazy college admissions
No, let's not get crazy, Brian. Let's not get greedy. All right. Good night, everybody. Good night, Brian. Good night, Peg. Thanks, guys.
Good night, everyone.
All right.
Thank you
Have
for
a good
joining us.
night, everybody.
Hi, everybody.